The spotlight effect. Why nobody cares about you as much as you think. Have you ever walked into a room and felt like all eyes were on you? That moment when you spilled coffee on your shirt, tripped on the sidewalk, or said something awkward in a meeting, and suddenly it seemed the entire world was watching, judging your every move? That feeling of being at the center of everyone's attention isn't just uncomfortable. It's exhausting. It's as if you're constantly on stage under a blinding spotlight, with an audience scrutinizing your performance. But what if I told you that spotlight exists primarily in your mind? This is where the point lies. Most people are far too concerned with their own spotlights to notice yours. The uncomfortable truth is that people simply don't care about you nearly as much as you think they do. And paradoxically, this realization might be one of the most liberating insights you'll ever encounter. The spotlight effect is a psychological phenomenon where we overestimate how much others notice and care about our appearance, actions, and mistakes. We believe we're the main character in everyone else's story, when in reality we're barely making a cameo appearance in their personal narratives. This distorted perception begins early in our development. As children, we exist in what psychologists call an egocentric state, believing we're the center of the universe. While most of us intellectually outgrow this perspective, emotionally many never do. We continue moving through life as if we're being watched, evaluated, and remembered by everyone we encounter. The consequences of living under this imaginary spotlight are profound and far-reaching. It creates a prison of self-consciousness where we police our own behavior, limit our potential, and exhaust ourselves with unnecessary performance anxiety. We become actors rather than authentic beings, constantly adjusting our performance based on an audience that isn't actually watching. Think about the last time you made what felt like a humiliating mistake. Perhaps you called someone by the wrong name, wore mismatched socks, or sent an email with an embarrassing typo. How long did you dwell on it afterward? Hours? Days? Maybe you still cringe thinking about it now. Now ask yourself, how long did others dwell on it? The truth is most people likely forgot about it minutes later, if they noticed at all. They were too busy worrying about their own perceived missteps and imperfections. This spotlight effect doesn't just affect our social comfort, it fundamentally alters how we live. We avoid risks for fear of public failure. We silence our authentic voices to prevent potential judgment. We exhaust ourselves maintaining an image that few people are actually evaluating. The origins of this spotlight effect run deep. Evolutionary psychologists suggest it stems from our ancestral need to maintain social standing within small, interdependent tribes where rejection could mean death. Our brains developed heightened sensitivity to social evaluation as a survival mechanism. But in today's world, this once adaptive trait has become maladaptive. We're applying tribal psychology to a global village, imagining that thousands of people are tracking our social performance when most barely register our existence. Social media has intensified this distortion. Platforms designed around constant performance and evaluation have created an environment where the spotlight effect thrives. Every post becomes a performance, every interaction a potential judgment. The occasional negative comment reinforces our belief that we're being constantly evaluated, even though it represents a tiny fraction of those who viewed our content, most of whom scrolled past without a second thought. Research by psychologists Thomas Gilovich and Kenneth Savitsky at Cornell University demonstrated just how profound this misperception is. In their landmark study, they asked participants to wear an embarrassing t-shirt, featuring Barry Manilow, considered uncool at the time, into a room full of strangers. The participants estimated that roughly half the people would notice their shirt. The reality? Less than 25% actually did. Even with an intentionally embarrassing stimulus, people significantly overestimated how much attention they received. This pattern repeats across countless studies. We believe our nervousness during presentations is obvious to everyone, when observers rarely notice. We think our fashion choices make lasting impressions, when most people are too preoccupied with their own appearance to pay attention to ours. The spotlight effect is further amplified by what psychologists call the illusion of transparency. Our tendency to overestimate how visible our internal states are to others. When we're anxious, we assume others can see our anxiety. When we're feeling insecure, we believe that insecurity is obvious to everyone around us. But research consistently shows that our internal experiences remain far more private than we believe. Consider this. When was the last time you carefully analyzed a stranger's outfit, scrutinized their presentation skills, or cataloged their social awkwardness? Unless you're unusually focused on others' flaws, you likely don't spend much time doing this. And neither does anyone else. They're too busy worrying about their own perceived inadequacies. This isn't to say no one ever notices or judges us. Of course they do occasionally. But the frequency, intensity, and duration of that attention is dramatically less than what our spotlight effect distorted minds lead us to believe. The real tragedy of the spotlight effect isn't just unnecessary anxiety. It's the profound limitation it places on our potential. When we believe we're constantly being watched and judged, we play it safe. We stick to the script. We hide our most interesting ideas, our most authentic expressions, our most innovative possibilities. How many brilliant thoughts have gone unshared because someone feared looking foolish? How many creative projects remained unlaunched because their creators worried about criticism? How many authentic connections never formed because people were too self-conscious to be vulnerable? The spotlight effect doesn't just make us uncomfortable, it makes us smaller versions of ourselves. But here's where transformation becomes possible. Understanding the spotlight effect doesn't just ease social anxiety. It offers a pathway to profound personal liberation. When you truly internalize that most people are too concerned with their own spotlights to notice yours, everything changes. First, you reclaim enormous amounts of mental and emotional energy. The constant performance monitoring that once consumed your cognitive resources can now be redirected toward what actually matters to you. The mental bandwidth previously devoted to impression management becomes available for creativity, connection, and presence. Second, you gain the freedom to be authentically yourself. When you're no longer performing for an imaginary audience, you can speak your truth, pursue your genuine interests, and express your unique perspective without the paralyzing fear of judgment. Third, you develop greater compassion, both for yourself and others. Recognizing that everyone struggles with their own version of the spotlight effect creates a sense of shared humanity. You begin to see that the person you're intimidated by is likely just as self-conscious as you are. The path to overcoming the spotlight effect begins with a simple but powerful realization. Other people are not thinking about you nearly as much as you're thinking about yourself. They're thinking about themselves, just as you're thinking about yourself. This isn't because people are selfish or uncaring. It's simply human nature. We all experience the world primarily through our own perspective. We are the protagonists of our own stories, with everyone else playing supporting roles. And in their stories, you're just a supporting character too, if you appear at all. Psychologist Carl Jung captured this reality perfectly when he wrote about the concept of projection. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. When we worry about others' judgments, we're often projecting our own self-criticism onto them. The harsh spotlight we imagine isn't coming from outside. It's our own internal critic casting shadows. The journey beyond the spotlight effect requires practical steps, not just philosophical understanding. Begin by conducting small experiments that challenge your assumptions about how much others notice you. Wear something slightly unusual but not outrageous, and observe how few people actually comment on it. Make a minor mistake during a presentation and notice how quickly the conversation moves on. Share an opinion you've been hesitant to express and see how little pushback you actually receive. Each of these experiments provides concrete evidence against the spotlight effect's distortions. Over time, these reality checks recalibrate your social perception to align more closely with how little attention others are actually paying to your perceived flaws and missteps. Another powerful practice is what psychologists call decentering. The conscious shift from seeing yourself as the center of social situations to recognizing you're just one element in a complex social ecosystem. When entering a room, rather than thinking about how others perceive you, focus on observing others with genuine curiosity. This attention outward naturally diminishes the spotlight effect. The Stoic philosophers understood this principle thousands of years ago. Epictetus advised, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." He recognized that concern with others' opinions creates a prison of our own making. The Stoics practiced focusing only on what they could control, their own thoughts and actions, while releasing attachment to others' perceptions, which lie outside their control. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent to how we affect others. Rather, it means distinguishing between genuine impact and imagined judgment. Care deeply about how your actions influence others' well-being, but release the exhausting concern about how they're evaluating your social performance, appearance, or status. As you practice this distinction, you'll notice a profound shift. Conversations become more meaningful when you're not constantly monitoring how you're being perceived. Creative work flows more easily when you're not anticipating criticism. Relationships deepen when you're not hiding behind a carefully constructed image. The spotlight effect's power diminishes further when you recognize another psychological reality: the beautiful mess effect. Research by psychologists Anna Bruck and Sabine Scholl demonstrates that we judge ourselves harshly for the same vulnerability that we find appealing in others. When others show vulnerability, we see authenticity and courage. When we show vulnerability, we fear we've revealed weakness or incompetence. This asymmetry creates a tragic irony. The very qualities that would make us more connected and appreciated, authenticity, vulnerability, uniqueness, are precisely what the spotlight effect prevents us from showing. By understanding this paradox, we can begin to trust that our authentic expression, even with its imperfections, is actually more appealing to others than our carefully curated performance. Consider how you feel when someone else makes a minor mistake or shows vulnerability. Do you think less of them, or do you often feel more connected to their humanity? The same grace you extend to others is generally extended to you, but the spotlight effect blinds you to this reality. As you gradually internalize that others care far less about your perceived failures and flaws than you imagine, a remarkable transformation occurs. The energy previously consumed by self-consciousness becomes available for genuine connection and creation. The mental space once filled with imagined judgments opens up for curiosity and presence. This shift doesn't happen overnight. The spotlight effect is deeply ingrained through years of social conditioning. But with consistent practice, its power gradually diminishes. Each time you choose authentic expression over performance, each time you recover quickly from embarrassment rather than dwelling on it, each time you focus outward instead of on how you're being perceived, you weaken the spotlight's grip. The ultimate freedom comes when you realize that even if people were watching and judging you as much as you fear, which they aren't, their opinions would still matter far less than you imagine. As author David Foster Wallace insightfully noted, "You'll worry less about what people think about you when you realize how seldom they do." This isn't an invitation to narcissism or indifference to others. Rather, it's recognition that true connection happens when we stop performing and start being present. When we're not consumed by how we're being perceived, we can actually listen, create, contribute, and connect from a place of authenticity. The spotlight effect keeps us trapped in a perpetual performance, always on stage, never at rest. Recognizing its distortion allows us to step off that exhausting stage and into a more spacious way of being. One where we're neither the center of attention nor trying to avoid it, but simply present as one human among many, each with their own rich inner world. So the next time you feel all eyes on you, when you stumble over words, when your hair isn't cooperating, when you express an opinion that doesn't land perfectly, remember this liberating truth: the spotlight is primarily in your mind. Most people are too busy worrying about their own spotlights to notice yours. And in that realization lies an invitation to a more authentic, connected, and liberated life. Not because you've learned to perform better under the spotlight, but because you've recognized that the spotlight was never as bright or as focused on you as you imagined. What would you do differently today if you truly believed that no one was paying nearly as much attention to you as you think? What authentic expression have you been holding back? What risk have you been avoiding? What part of yourself have you been hiding? The stage is empty. The audience has gone home. You're free to stop performing and start living.